Okay, so sometimes you see a news story and it's like, there's got to be something more to this. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt when I saw the story about Michael Saylor and his company Strategy
Oh, yeah.
and what they're planning to do next. I mean, we always keep an eye on what they're up to, but this feels different.
I know exactly what you mean when a player like Strategy makes a move. It's not just, a ripple, it's a wave. It sends shockwaves through the whole Bitcoin space.
It does. And for anyone listening who maybe hasn't been following every twist and turn of the Strategy saga,
Right.
we're going to break it all down for you today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got to do a deep dive on this one for sure.
So to set the stage, the headline is that Strategy is getting ready to issue a bunch of new shares, like a lot of them, up to 5 million shares of something called Series A, perpetual preferred stock.
Yeah.
Now, I know that sounds kind of complicated, but think of it this way. It's basically Strategy creating these new pieces of ownership in their company, and they're going to offer them up to investors.
So they're creating more shares of the company and offering them out there.
Exactly. And usually companies do this to, raise money for different things, but here's the twist. Strategy has been super clear that they're going to use a big chunk of the cash they get from selling these new shares to buy one thing and one thing only.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
That's the big story here. It's not just like general fundraising. This is a very targeted maneuver to fuel their Bitcoin buying spree.
Exactly. And it's like a huge statement about how much they believe in Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, they're putting their money where their mouth is.
They really are. Yeah, and these shares they're offering, they've got some interesting perks attached to them, like a little sweetener for investors.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
So for one, they're offering what's called a cumulative dividend of 10% per year, and they're going to pay that out every quarter, starting in June of next year. Wow, 10%. That's pretty generous.
It's designed to attract, not just the diehard Bitcoin believers, but also investors who might be looking for a more steady income stream.
Right. So it's like you get the potential upside of Bitcoin, but you also get these regular payouts, which you don't always see with a company that's so heavily into such a volatile asset.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix for sure.
Oh, and there's another layer to this whole share thing that I thought was interesting. Strategy, they put in this clause that basically lets them buy back all of those outstanding shares if the total number dips below 25% of what they originally issued.
Okay, so that's a pretty standard thing for companies to do with their stock, and it's called a buyback.
Right, but what's the strategy behind it? Like, why would they want to do that?
Well, it gives them flexibility.
Yeah.
They could buy back those shares to, tighten up their control over the company's ownership.
I see. So they can kind of, manage things behind the scenes.
Exactly. Yeah, and it can also be a way to kind of, prop up the price of the remaining shares if things get a little shaky in the market.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got this big announcement about Strategy potentially raising tons of money to buy more Bitcoin.
Right.
But here's where the timeline gets really interesting, because this comes just a couple of weeks after what was surprisingly their smallest Bitcoin purchase ever.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Back on March 17th, they only added 130 Bitcoin to their stash for about $10.7 million, which...
That is tiny for them.
It's tiny for them, right? Their previous smallest buy was 169 Bitcoin back in August of last year.
Wow. So what's the deal? Why the sudden, shift in gears?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I mean, we've got this company that's like synonymous with just gobbling up Bitcoin, making this teeny tiny purchase, and then bam, a few weeks later, they drop this bombshell about a massive plan to buy even more.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher for sure.
It does make you think, right?
Well, remember, around the time of that smaller purchase, there was a lot of chatter in the crypto world about things maybe, cooling down a bit.
Oh, yeah, like the market sentiment wasn't exactly, sunshine and rainbows.
Right. Some of the analysts were saying we might see a period of, sideways trading or even a dip in prices.
So there were definitely some warning signs out there.
Yeah, there were. And, maybe that smaller purchase was Strategy, just being cautious, waiting to see which way the wind would blow.
But now they're going all in.
It's like they're saying, you know what, we don't care about the short-term noise. We're in this for the long haul.
It's a bold statement.
It is. And it goes against this idea that they're getting cold feet about Bitcoin.
So let's talk about how much Bitcoin they actually have, because it's a ridiculous amount.
It is mind-boggling.
Since they started buying back in August of 2020, Strategy and all their little sister companies have racked up a grand total of 499,226 Bitcoin.
499,226 Bitcoin. That's just insane.
And to put that into perspective, that's about $33.1 billion worth of Bitcoin
That they've bought up. With an average price of around $66,360 per Bitcoin.
And here's a fun fact. They are so close to hitting a major milestone.
Oh yeah, what's that?
They only need about 774 more Bitcoin to reach 500,000 Bitcoin.
500,000, that's unbelievable.
It's crazy, right? And at today's prices, that would only cost them about $64 million, which is pocket change for them at this point.
It really is, yeah. And to think that 500,000 Bitcoin, that's like 2.38% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist.
That's a serious chunk of the pie.
It is, yeah. It's a huge concentration of Bitcoin in the hands of one company.
Which, it raises some interesting questions about, the whole decentralized nature of Bitcoin and all that. But we can get into that
We
later.
definitely have to unpack that, yeah.
But for now, let's just acknowledge that despite all the ups and downs we've seen in the Bitcoin market, Strategy's bet has paid off so far.
Big time, yeah.
Their Bitcoin stash is currently worth an estimated $41.1 billion.
Meaning they're sitting on a profit of over $8 billion.
Not bad for a few years of work.
Not bad at all.
So, for everyone listening who's maybe trying to make sense of all this Bitcoin madness, what does Strategy's move really tell us?
It's a pretty clear signal that at least one major player out there is still super bullish on Bitcoin.
Like, they're not fazed by the little bumps in the road.
Nope, they're in it for the long game, and they're using some serious financial firepower to increase their position.
Exactly. And when a company with Strategy's, resources and reputation makes a move like this, it definitely gets people talking.
It does. It makes other investors and institutions stop and think, maybe we should take another look at our own Bitcoin strategy.
So to wrap it all up, Michael Saylor and Strategy are basically saying we're doubling down on Bitcoin in a big way.
Yeah, they're putting their money where their mouth is.
This whole plan to issue new stock just to buy more Bitcoin, it's a huge vote of confidence, especially considering that tiny purchase they made a few weeks ago and all the uncertainty in the market.
Right. And we can't forget about the sheer scale of what they could potentially own 500,000 Bitcoin. That's the game changer.
It really is. They would become like a Bitcoin behemoth.
Yeah, and that's something to think about, as the story unfolds.
Exactly, because with that kind of concentrated ownership, it raises some big questions about the future of Bitcoin,
Yeah, like how does that impact the whole idea of decentralization?
And what does it mean for the average investor?
Lots to ponder for sure.
Definitely, but hey, that's what deep dives are for, right?
That's right. We got to keep digging.
All right, folks, until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the fascinating world of Bitcoin.
Later.
Bye.
See ya.
Take care.